Good trouble, internet friends. Bill here. Today is Sunday, July 26th, 2020, and I'm calling out the day and date because it's been an extraordinary summer Sunday here in the United States. Today, Congressman John Lewis, one of the original and last remaining icons of the civil rights movement, crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the last time. And this is also the day where we are exactly 100 days out from the next presidential election here. The fact that those two things coincide is just one of those things that history does to remind us where we are on the spectrum of things, and how, despite our best efforts to ignore them, there are always things that remind us of who we are and the work we have left to do. I can't say a lot about John Lewis that hasn't already been said. He was a personal hero of mine and somebody I greatly admired from afar. And if I think anything of John Lewis, it's realizing that in the time he was standing up to injustice, that there was nothing like this, like what I'm talking to you on right now. There was no way to actually document or record what he and everyone else in that movement was walking into every time they went out to challenge something, to challenge the status quo. John Lewis was a man of smaller stature, but he had the heart of a lion. I mean, clearly one of the most courageous Americans who ever lived. And he was part of and leading a movement that brought massive change in his lifetime, in our lifetime, to the country that he loved so much and believed in so much that he was willing to put himself physically on the line for it. Every time they went out, they would expect to be accosted, beaten, spat upon, and honestly, maybe far worse, every single time they went out. And when I think of those pictures and those films that we've all seen from that era, when people seek justice, and especially in the 1960s during the civil rights era in the United States, you always see in those photographs and in those film clips the background faces, like a sea of white, of hate-filled, contorted, distorted faces, sneering at those who were marching for their civil and human rights. And people who were, physically accosting and assaulting them, right there on camera, right there in the pictures. The people pouring hot coffee on them while there were sit-ins at lunch counters. Those are like nameless, faceless extras because they're just there, right? They're just like the background dressing to it. A mob of rage and anger and violence. So much has changed in the lifetime of John Lewis. And people will talk about that for a long time and record it in different ways. But one of the changes that I think is just extraordinary, and one of the most important, is that because of this device that we have in our hands and in our pockets, those faces won't be nameless anymore. This device, the technology, is leveling the playing field of just who's on which side. We get to see it now, don't we? I bring this up because we've seen a lot of upheaval in the United States in 2020. And at every step, there have been people brave enough to hold a camera up like this, unblinking, unmoving, and to record what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, and ultimately what they're feeling, so that all of us can understand and have a better idea of what's really happening in our country and in the lives of our fellow countrymen and everyone who loves, freedom and democracy around the world. Everyone has a name. Everybody lives somewhere. The dividing line is very important. It's a very important thing right now. Not only for people to know which side of it they're on, but for all of us to know which side of it they're on. And that is a true power that we have right now, that everyone who seeks the things that freedom-loving people around the world seek has right now. The situation in Portland right now that is expected to travel to other cities at the threat of the man in the White House. When you look at those clips as well, and some of those still images, you can see at certain angles behind the helmets, behind the face masks, you can see in the eyes of some of those federal agents there, you can see their eyes spinning. You can see the fear in their eyes. You can see the confusion in their eyes. You can even see, I think, some of the shame in their eyes. Now, that's not going to be the case for every one of them, certainly. But if the eyes are the window to a soul, you can see that there's confusion there. You can see that there's even cowardice there. And I think it's important to recognize that in John Lewis's time, people were nameless and faceless and awful. They were just an emotion of rage and violence and, a wall of that we could just look at and know that was there, but it really didn't have individuality to it on that side. Now it does. And I think it's very important at this time to recognize how important that is. Not only to look at somebody in the face and see their humanity, but to look at somebody in the face and see the lack of humanity, or the confusion, or the fear. If there's any hope to pull some of those people back from what they're doing every day, it's us recognizing those qualities in them. It's not necessary that we do it. It's not our job to save anyone from anything or convince anyone of anything. These videos certainly aren't meant to do that. And they couldn't do it if in any event. But what we can do is tell each other that we're together in this cause. And I think John Lewis lived his life that way, as a messenger for a cause greater than himself, even though from where I sit, I saw him as a leader, as a king, as a man who championed that cause, and every fiber of my being celebrated that. And I think his humility, what people often said, he was a humble man, was his recognition that as great as I thought him to be, as large as he loomed over that era in many people's lives, he saw himself as just another traveler, like you, like me, on a path that began before we were born and may still exist long after we're gone, but we will walk that path. So in the days and weeks ahead, we'll be talking about a lot of things. But today I just wanted to say we're 100 days out. And John Lewis has gone home. And for every ending, there's always a new beginning. And we get to decide what that new beginning will be. That's up to us. Stay healthy. That's all I have for today. Steady.